Alright, you guys, I wanted to make you a video on the PowerPoint that I usually present to class for color. And now we're getting down to the last weeks of school, and I wanted to definitely introduce color so that you can have an opportunity to use your oil pastels and your chalk pastels to and apply that to a still life. But I just wanted to give you some background information on color. Okay, so what is color? Color is light reflected off of objects. There's a whole science to light and color. It tells us that different spectral wavelengths in sunlight create all the different colors our eyes see. And in the absence of light, when we're in total darkness, the eye does not see color. For our purposes, color is a pigment or a paint, an oil stick, a chalk stick. And what we know about color is that originally color came from natural things in the environment, precious stones, plants, and all of these were gathered up and grounded down into powders that later you would add oil or egg to in order to turn it into a paint, and that's how artists used it. Nowadays companies take care of all of that for us, right? Okay, so in color, something that you should know about color is that when we talk about color, color has three components, three parts to it. The first one is its proper name. So if you ever see the word hue, H-U-E, that's just a fancy way to say color. But something that's important to us is intensity. So intensity is how dull or how bright a color is. Another name for intensity is also saturation. So if you ever taken a selfie or a picture of something and then you went to the filters and you messed around with the saturation, you notice that the colors got really intense. So that's a way to adjust color. You can adjust the intensity of it by adding things away or mixing things into it. And another thing you can do to color is you can also adjust the value of it. If my PowerPoint would work. Okay, here we go. So value is how light or how dark a color is. And every color, depending on what you add to it, if you add white or if you add black or if you add gray to it, you can adjust its value. Okay, so someone that's very important to artists turns out to be a scientist. Again, Sir Isaac Newton, in terms of color, he did something very special for us. Normally, right, we know Sir Isaac Newton as a scientist. He's the one who put a name to this gravitational force that pulls things down to the earth. He called it gravity, right? But something that he did for us artists is that he realized that when white light or sunlight passes through a glass or plastic prism, that it breaks up into certain colors. He realized that white light isn't white, that it's actually made up of different colors, and that was very revolutionary. And what he discovered also is that we as people, humans, are able to see 7 major colors, and he called those colors a spectrum. And he noticed that the colors always happen in the same order. And a good way to remember that order is this acronym, if you've ever seen it, ROY, G, BIV. It just stands for the order of the colors that happen in the spectrum. And if you've ever been outside, and many of us have seen this before, after the rain and then the sun comes out, you might notice the phenomena that we know of called a rainbow. And the rainbow is a spectrum, and what's acting as that prism is the water droplets in the air. Okay, All right, so years later, somebody puts the colors of the spectrum into this very useful tool called a color wheel. And many of us have painted color wheels in school, right? And what the color wheel does is that it organizes the colors that are based on the spectrum into different families. And the three major families that we know of that we get from the color wheel are the primary, the secondary, and the tertiaries. But there's more than that. So our first family, red, yellow, blue, the primaries. We call them primaries because there's no other color in the spectrum or out in nature that you can mix together to make these colors. They just are. So from these three colors, we get all the other colors of the spectrum. Okay, so say if you mix two primaries together, if you mix red and yellow, you'll end up with a secondary. So primary, primero, first. It's a good way to remember. And then secondary, segundo, right? Which when you mix these two together, you get orange. When you mix red and blue, you get violet. And when you mix yellow and blue, you get green. Okay? All right. Secondaries. And then these little guys in between the secondary and the primary, these little ones, there's 6 of them, they're called tertiaries. Okay. All right, so review primaries, red, yellow, blue. They're the most intense colors, the brightest colors. Our eyes will always go to those colors. When you mix those two together, you get secondaries. So orange, green, and violet to make orange, red, and yellow, to make green, blue, and yellow, and to make violet, blue, and red. Okay? All right, and the tertiaries, like I was talking about, this is when you mix one primary and a secondary. You mix those two together and you get these, and every primary has 2 tertiaries. So blue has blue green and blue violet. Red has red violet and red orange. And yellow has yellow orange and yellow green. Okay? You're like, hey, wait a minute, I know those colors. Like that's teal and that's magenta and that's lime, right? Those are just colors that companies that sell say crayons or markers like Crayola, they put those names on there to sell those colors. But these are basically what they are. Okay, so those are the 3 major families: primary, secondary, tertiary, but there's more. All right, so if you mix a color with white, you get a tint. And if you mix a color with black, you get a shade. And if you mix a color with gray, back this up so you can see it. If you mix a color with gray, you get a tone. Okay. Sometimes artists just want to make artworks with tints, shades, and tones. Okay. All right. Complementary colors are colors that are opposite on the color wheel. Okay. And what's important about that is that when complementary colors are put next to each other, if you put yellow next to violet, don't mix them, but you place these 2 colors next to each other, they vibrate, they call attention to themselves. And sometimes it's hard to look at these colors when they're next to each other. They're so intense. So that's important. And something else that happens is when you mix complements or colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel, is that they neutralize each other or cancel each other out and turn into gray, mush, brown. And that's helpful. And the reason why is because in the yellow and violet, those, if you mix these colors, you're essentially mixing all the primaries together, because violet is made of red and blue. So red and blue and yellow mixed together, it's going to turn into brown or gray. Okay. So the opposite of blue is orange, and the opposite of red is green. Okay. Alright, so mix those together and you get these beautiful neutrals. And neutrals are important. They're those really moody middle gray colors that we need to know, because they're what shadows are made of. So like if you're going to paint an orange sitting on a table, or you're going to use your oil pastels to color an orange on the table, the shadow that's cast by that orange is definitely going to have some color in it. It's going to be gray, but it's going to be a gray that has color. And it's possibly going to be the opposite of orange, which is blue. So like a blue gray. Okay. Alright, so colors, analogous colors are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. And many times students ask me, what colors go together? What colors work together? And I will always say that analogous colors will always harmonize. So if you take, for instance, yellow, again, colors that are analogous to yellow would be yellow orange and yellow green, and they have to be next to each other. Not, you can't like jump over, you know. All of these colors will work together. Okay. Also, colors make us feel things. They, you know, affect our mood, and designers and artists know that. And on the color wheel, if you cut the color wheel basically in half, on one side you'll have all the cool colors, or colors that remind us of things that are fresh, water, coldness, okay? And then on the other side we'll have colors that remind us of warmth or fire, okay? Alright, and if you are creating an artwork like this one by Picasso that has only one base color mixed with its tints and its shades, then you have an artwork that is said to be monochromatic. Okay, mono means one and chroma means color, so one color. Okay. Alright, so those are color families. Alright, so now to our assignment. Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to begin practicing mixing colors to get secondary colors. So we're going to be mixing primary colors to get secondary colors. It's a really easy assignment. What I want you to do is draw 3 overlapping circles, and you can use like the bottom of a can of peas or whatever, or if you have a compass, or if you have some blue tape, anything to draw a circle. And you can do this on a piece of paper from your sketchbook. Draw 3 overlapping circles, and then take your oil pastels. You'll do one in oils and then one in chalk. Take your yellow, red, and blue and basically start to color them in. And I don't want you to take out your orange or your violet or your green. What I want you to do is color in the whole circle red, and then when that's done, take the yellow and go over what you have. Color this whole thing in yellow, and then when it gets here, it's going to blend together. And then when you get to the bottom one, then you'll color this whole thing blue, and it'll overlap these, and you'll get that. Okay, so that's our first assignment. When you're done with this assignment, I'll post the other one where what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating a small color chart using 12 colors instead of just 3. I want us to do these assignments. They're really easy and basic, but they'll help us before we start to work on an actual still life. Okay? All right, that's it then.